agendaless. That's a very interesting concept to try to wrap our arms around and our mind around, really, in our walk of faith. How can we really live a life without an agenda? It seems like we make agendas all the time, and in faith we've kind of been trained, I think, almost to have an agenda with people. So this is a different way of looking at what God is calling us to. When He calls us to a life of love, and we narrow it down to the simple message of what Jesus came to do, we really come to that place of the healthiest place to live, it seems, is without an agenda. Don't you find that to be difficult sometimes, for one, to grasp conceptually, and then, how do we actually practically live that out?
Well, I want people to follow Christ. I want them to know the love of Christ, because I personally believe that that's the best option for our life. But the reality is, if I just chase after the best version of me and then allow God to do His work in them, ultimately I can love them more purely and more authentically. Because I know this, the moment a person feels that they are your project, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Sometimes I think I felt like that. I need to get this person to a place of decision, and I think really we get freed up and become more effective when we let go of that as our agenda and realize that we plant the seed. That's our responsibility to do our best, and then water it and build relationship with people. But the Bible says that God's the one that gives the increase, and how can anyone even come to God except that the Spirit of God draws them? And we have that Spirit actually in us. And as we relate to people and talk to them and really love them, it's God's Spirit that is working through us to draw them to Himself. We've done some work in the inner city. One of the things that's sometimes problematic for churches, working with even the government like that, inner city schools, is often churches still go to that school with an agenda. We'll do this if we can put a invitation to our meetings, or a tract of Christian faith or something like that. How have we approached that? You've been spearheading a lot of our efforts in the inner city.
One of our desires is to model agendaless love by simply loving people right where they are with no strings attached. There's no criterion for those to be a receiver of God's love. So if we're going to go into the highways and the byways, if we're going to go in the inner cities, if we're going to go on the school or the campus, we're just going to love people for where they are. And I think what that does is it puts us in close proximity to people with a very potent message. Jesus' message is potent. And when we go into those places and we're in proximity to people, they're going to eventually ask the question, why would you love me this way? Why would you care about me? Where are the strings attached? I've had people ask me, what's your angle? And it's the best, most rewarding, most authentic time of my faith to look them and honestly from the depths of my soul to say, there's no angle. I'm gonna love you like this forever, and you can test me on this for years. You're not gonna see me bait and switch you. I'm not gonna pull a bait and switch approach. I'm just gonna keep on loving you. And I think when they hear that and they see that, it becomes so real to them. They go, man, that's attractive to me. And they'll ask that question, and then ultimately I'll be able, we as a congregation will be able to say, I'm ready to give a reason for the hope that I have, but I'm gonna do it with gentleness and I'm gonna do it with kindness.
That really comes from, I think, a theme verse we have for this study on love is 1 Peter 3:15. It says that very specifically, how we're to be ready to give an answer, but it says when asked. Sometimes we're trying to give answers when people aren't asking, and that doesn't ever go well. It's our agenda on top of what we think they need. Instead of hearing from their heart, where they're at, are they ready? And allowing their readiness to bring out our response. I think that's a real strong key in what you mentioned in gentleness and kindness. Those are words that are in that verse, that we need to be gentle in our approach. That's what love is, and kind. Respect people for who they are and their humanity. So we have a great opportunity before us, whether it's inner city schools or whether it's a high-rise office complex, the suburbs, no matter where we are in our journey, no matter what your personal journey is, what can we do to reach out and love people without imposing an agenda on them? So when you talk today in your group, think about an example that you can think of when you approach someone without an agenda. Instead of trying to force something to happen, that you approach them with an open heart and open spirit just to love them. Can you think of a time like that you approached someone that way? And then what was their response to your approach? Could you tell a difference? Could you tell even a more openness that would come? Or what was their response when you reached out with that, in that way, not trying to impose something, but just being open to let God work through you and let His Spirit do the work? I think you're going to have a great discussion today. This is a very powerful, life-changing concept if we can get a hold of it, where God does His thing through us instead of us trying to do His thing for Him. And I think we'll find a great key to an exciting life of love that's in front of us today.